So, so thank you very much to the MSRI for giving us the opportunity to run this program. I have spent 2 weeks here already, and it's really a great place and a great facility. So I come even on weekends. So, and it's very pleasant. So, as said in the title, so this introductory lecture was targeted toward harmonic analysis. And so it seems harmonic analysts, or at least the one who have not written a paper in analytic number theory are a small minority, but this talk is for them. So I will really review some basic concepts from analytic number theory, and it certainly won't be exhaustive, so experts in some important areas should not complain. So maybe the goal also of this lecture will be kind of to introduce and to motivate maybe the courses that will be given during this week. So yeah, it's more a pretext. So really for analytic number theorists, okay, it will be things well known, but okay. But maybe it's good also for PhD students. So what is analytic number theory about? So it's about, I would say, finding integers of a special shape so let's say prove existence and determine if infinitely many such integers, and if so, count them. So even if the set is finite, it's probably also interesting, but we will look for sets which have infinite cardinal count them. And so usually the methods to count this set of integers borrow a lot from analytic methods, but it won't be possible not to borrow from other areas as well, especially arithmetic geometry, also algebraic geometry a bit. And so it may range to great varieties of topic and techniques. Okay, and so yeah, analytic number theory is not limited to analysis, really not. And you have also combinatorics, and so a lot of stuff comes in, which makes the topic really attractive. So as a number theory as a whole, in fact. So maybe the first set you want to count, these are the primes. And then for this, you know, thanks to Euclid, that the set is infinite. And if you want to really count the number of primes precisely, then it leads you a long way, so through Euler, and then maybe Riemann, and Hadamard de la Vallée-Poussin, and then the horizon here is the Riemann hypothesis. So hopefully it will be solved during this program. And okay, so next so if you know you have many primes, then there are another set which is also important, primes in arithmetic progressions. So which are primes of the form, Q, K plus A. So we take so you give yourself a modulus Q and a starting point of your arithmetic progression, and you look at these primes. In this, then you have more challenging problems. So this is so this theorem. This is a theorem of Dirichlet. And then you have also a string of progress about counting these, which go also through kind of also Riemann and Adamar de Lavelle et Poussin and Landau, and then the horizon is the generalized Riemann hypothesis, so which would allow you to count a prime in arithmetic progression with great accuracy. You could have also, so I will really focus on primes for the moment. Just to continue with this line, so then you have also, now that you have many primes and you try to find primes of a specific shape, but now you have also the twin primes. And so then you look at primes which are of the form, so at pairs of primes which are spaced by the smallest positive number, if you want infinitely many such primes, which is 2. So you look whether there are infinitely many pairs of primes which are spaced by 2. And you also have a kind of a dual problem, which is in fact earlier than the twin primes, which is Goldbach problem, which is the problem of writing any integer as a sum of 2 primes. So which is related. Can any sufficiently large integer, even integer, of course, be written as a sum of 2 primes? And so about these questions, you certainly know, even if you are not in analytic number theory, that there have been tremendous progress in the last years, and it was in fact a motivation for setting up this semester. So which was the work of Yetan Zhang, so who made the first breakthrough, and then there have been subsequent work by subsequent work by Polymath, who improved on Zhang numerical results, I would say, but then there have been breaks by Maynard, with a big simplification of Zhang approach and Tao. And so the result is an approximation to this. So there exist infinitely many pairs of prime such that the difference, I don't remember the number, 246, yeah, is bounded by 246. And so we will discuss a bit, very small portion of the techniques, in fact, which occur in Zhang work. also, there is some also problem which is not very far from the twin prime conjecture. So it's another very recent result of Matomaki, Radziwiłł, and Tao, which is, so it's a bit technical to state, but I will just state that way. So non-correlation of the Liouville function under additive shift with itself. So, okay, it's yeah, it could be considered a good, maybe an approximation to the twin prime. Or it's a kind of problem which is very much related. I will not explain what is the Liouville function, but it's not okay. Anyway, and so what I should say is that this really breakthrough is one of the fundamental ingredients is the work of Matomaki and Radziwiłł. Sorry, excuse me. I hope it's correct, even on now on second. Yeah. And so these results about arithmetic function in very short interval, it is the topic of the course of Keisha and Maxime. So I don't know if you are they there? No, don't know. Okay, I don't know if they will cover the application to Liouville function, but okay, the result is very so should have also more further application, but this is one which is very striking, I find. Okay, maybe so one has also an approximation to the twin prime conjecture, which is the sums of three primes. So, which is a slight weakening of Goldbach problem, which is any sufficiently large odd integer can be written as the sum of three primes. And this is, so this statement with sufficiently large is due to Vinogradov. And it's a classical result. And very recently, there have been work of Harald Elfgott, who replace sufficiently large by the exact statement, I guess any number greater, odd number greater than, don't remember, 7 is sum of three primes. Okay. Okay, and in the same range, and you often see the same name appearing, so periodically, but then you have also, and I will not also describe, but it's also not far from Vinogradov type result, which are linear equations in the primes. So, which is a wide generalization of this, which is due to Green and Tau. And and this result borrows a lot from harmonic analysis. But I will not cover this, and it will be not discussed in this week. So, but it should be discussed downstairs, I imagine. Okay, so maybe for the moment enough with primes, but there are other set of integers which you want to look at. So, for instance, you could look at Diophantine equations. And so one Diophantine equation is this one. And so this is, of course, Fermat equation. And unfortunately, Fermat equation was not solved by analytic method, although there are some analysis in it through the theory of modular forms. But so it was solved, this equation was solved by was solved by Andrew Wise. But you should know that one of the first, say, positive result in that direction, besides the work of Faltings, was the work of I think Adelman, Isbron, and Fouvry, who proved that the first case of this equation so holds for infinitely many primes. So, and this is a result which is really in analytic number theory, and which we use things that will be discussed a bit later. Another kind of equation are equation of that shape, so in integers. So diagonal equation. So it's a question of given some power L, so I will take L greater than 2, maybe. So, and given an integer, can you represent this integer as a sum of say, k L powers? And so which is called the Waring problem. And so you can always do so as long so can you solve this equation given n, I would say, and I should say large enough. And then you can solve this equation if the number of variables is sufficiently large, and sufficiently large being something depending on the exponent L. And so this is the content of the circle method. And then so you can obtain some bounds on this minimal number, and then there is a kind of a lot of development of the circle method came from the need to make this number as small as possible. And so maybe so probably the most important player today in this is Trevor Woolley. And you know, so people in harmonic analysis, that very recently there have been a big progress on a technical problem related to this question, which is called Vinogradov conjecture, which is the same Vinogradov, but another conjecture of result by Bourgain, Demeter, and Gut. And so with the proof of this decoupling conjecture, which has applications to the circle method. But this won't be discussed this week. There have been a course in the introductory workshop in harmonic analysis. 2 weeks ago. Okay. Okay, so these are kind of the sort of problems that analytic numbers theorists are keen on solving. And so I will just want to discuss a bit some of the techniques which are used, and some which will be explained in the courses. So first, when you look at the question of existence, so then all these problems, in order to admit, so to see that there should be a solution, then you have necessary conditions. Which are of local nature. Okay, there may be also more global ones, but imagine here is really a very simple local condition. So if P is prime, then P has no divisor greater than 1, which is greater than 1, and say less than P to the 100. Here is a local condition, so it imposes the congruence condition of, if you want to see that this integer is a prime, it has to be not congruent to 0 modulo all integers less than this, or all prime numbers less than this. And of course, you could say, but here I could take 1/2 instead of 100. But in analytic number theory, this weaker necessary condition is usually implemented, especially in what is called sieve methods. So, but these are local kind of local condition. If you look at solving a Diophantine equation like this, so let's say let's say P is a polynomial with integral coefficient, and you look at the solution of this equation. So then, necessarily, this implies that for any integer, then, so if you have a solution to this, then that solution satisfies the congruence condition, which is really obvious. So in all this, so when we have all these local conditions, sometime what we would like to show is to go in the reverse direction, and this is called a local global principle. So here, this is a point where, which I would say, this thing, this arrow usually does not really belong to analytic number theory. It's more belong to arithmetic geometry, I would say. Although there are examples of equation with, okay, it's a K here, sorry. There are equations in very few variables in which going in that direction involves some deep theorem about analytic number theory and so-called L functions. So, but yeah, for many if you have many variables, it's often largely arithmetic algebraic question. So, but okay, it answers it may help to answer the question of existence, but it does not help to count things. Okay, yeah, maybe I will give a specific example, 2 examples that I like. Just. for instance, okay, you have this Fermat theorem. So this equation here, so given n is solvable if and only if, so let's say n is non-zero. So you have a first local condition, which is that your integer n has to be positive. And the second local, so the other local condition is if p divides n to odd order, then p congruent to 1 mod 4. And so this is, of course, Fermat's theorem. And you have a, so this is for sum of 2 squares, and for sum of 3 squares, then you have a theorem of Gauss, which says that n has to be positive, and n is not a fourth power times a number congruent to 7 mod 8. Is not. Okay. So now comes the problem of counting. And so basically you have your set of integers, I don't know. And so you know it is not empty, or even sometimes you don't know whether it is empty or not, but what you want to do is to count the number of elements, maybe I will put n, of n up to size some big n. So you want to be able to count the partial sum of the characteristic function. And more generally, so in fact, sometimes it's better not exactly to count characteristic functions, but some other objects. So it falls into the more general objective. So given f function on the positive integers, so it's a complex valued, evaluate the partial sums as n goes to infinity. And so such a function on the positive integer, it's called an arithmetic function. So it's really not something much complicated. And so analytic number theory revolves a lot on evaluating these partial sums of arithmetic functions. And okay, so the space of multiplicative functions is equipped with some composition laws. So one which reflects the multiplicative structure of the integer is the Dirichlet convolution. So if you have two multiplicative functions, their Dirichlet convolution is this sum. And you have also an operation of additive convolution. And okay. So for example, if you take the divisor function, so d of n is the number of divisors of an integer. So this is the Dirichlet convolution of the constant function 1 with itself. And you have more so some other important, so another important example is the von Mangold function. Which is supported of prime powers, and which is a good function to use if you want to count prime numbers. So because it's essentially supported on the primes, and this function is a convolution of the Möbius function with the function, the logarithm function, and the Möbius function, so is the function defined by this. Okay, so a method to evaluate these partial sums, what you could do is you could form generating series. So there are two types of generating series you could imagine. So that one, so if the function does not grow too fast, so where z would be in the upper half plane. So in the Poincaré upper half plane. Or you could form a so-called, so this is Laurent series, and otherwise you could form also a Dirichlet series. And so you see, in all these examples, I've taken my generating series to the variable of the generating series to be complex valued. So there is complex analysis in. And so these are, and if you are lucky, your generating series will have nice symmetry properties, and then have nice analytic properties from which you can deduce information on your partial sums by either say integrating this series over the unit circle, or here by using inverse Mellin transform. So and so yeah, let's me call this f of z. Let's call this LF of S. And the two composition laws that are written here as can be, of course, so you could form a new generating series. So if you take a product of two Laurent series, so this generating series, it corresponds to the additive convolution of f and g. And now if you take the product of two L series, it will be the Dirichlet series of the multiplicative convolution. So if you are lucky, examples where you are lucky, where your generating series have nice properties. So for instance, if you take the characteristic function of the squares, then f of z is Riemann theta series, and this is a modular form, so it has invariant or quasi-invariance under some subgroup, finite index subgroup of SL2Z inside acting on the Poincaré per half plane. So it's a modular form, and then it's very useful. And in fact, from this invariance property, you can derive the analytic property of Riemann zeta function. And if you take the sum of it, then it corresponds to looking at the number of representation of an integer as a sum of two squares, and it corresponds to the square of this theta series, which is again a modular form. Another interesting example is that, so I have to tweak things a little bit. It's not exactly this, but if you take the divisor function, then its generating series will be another modular form, which will be an Eisenstein series. So it will be it's not so the generating series is not as simple. The exponential has to be replaced by something else. But anyway, and you have other example. For instance, if you consider for instance, the partition function, which will also be a so-called quasi-modular form. Okay. Sometimes you are not as lucky. So otherwise, I would say use the circle method. And you have also all sorts of phenomenon occurring. Yeah. What do I want to say? Yeah. Yeah, 5 minutes. Okay, so there are two kinds of extra refinement on the problem of summing these objects. These are summing arithmetic functions over short intervals. Where h is small compared to x. And, okay, so that's one aspect. And also summing arithmetic function over arithmetic progressions. So you do not sum over a short interval, or you could do also. Okay, it was n maybe. Okay, and in fact, these two problems, they look different, but they are very similar. Here, you would like to restrict your integers to this small set, which is a kind of set for the relative to the small set relative to the Archimedean topology. But here, this condition, you could interpret it as restricting your set to a neighborhood of A, of this integer A, in the Q-adic topology. So, okay, maybe the techniques can be different in the end, but they are very closely related and part, in fact, of the same sort of question. Maybe, yeah, we'll keep this. And okay. And of course, either the shorter interval you have or the larger modulus you have, the harder the problem become. And for instance, let me recall what we know in the case of prime numbers. So, in the case of prime numbers, so if f, say, is the characteristic function of primes, we can evaluate such sum. So, but not by much. So, can handle interval of length so n times exponential of minus c root of log n for c some fixed constant. So you can have an good formula for this when f is a characteristic function of the prime. If your interval is really a very little bit smaller than n, and one can handle arithmetic progressions of modulus q less than log of n, say to the a, for any a. And so you see the arithmetic progressions of this is very short compared to n, and this is quite long compared to n. And what would the Riemann or the generalized Riemann hypothesis say? Can do interval of length n to the 1/2, maybe log n, maybe minus 3 cube, sorry. And it can do interval of that length for h, or it can do q less than n, again, n to the 1/2 times log n, maybe minus 3. So under this generalized Riemann hypothesis, you can do much further for this restricted problem over the primes. And okay. So what I will be discussed during this lectures. So two things that will be discussed during these lectures will be results on average towards this, but the techniques hold not only for the primes, but for much other things. So maybe I will state what happens in the case of arithmetic progression. So you have this famous theorem of Bombieri-Vinogradov. And so that Vinogradov here is not the same Vinogradov of the other of the previous boards, which says the following. So for any A, So you look at the prime in the congruence class A mod Q. So here you have the main term. So this is the average of the error term of the counting function of the prime in arithmetic progression of modulus Q. So this is less than n over log n to the A. And as long as for Q less than n to the 1/2 over log n to the power b, some b depending on A. So you see, now if instead of considering arithmetic progression for individual moduli, you consider it an average over moduli, you obtain a result which is as good as the generalized Riemann hypothesis in terms of the length of the modulus, because Q can go really up to square root of n. So this result is as strong as the Riemann hypothesis. For many applications, you can use it as a surrogate. So some of the what I want to say is that to prove his theorem on gaps between primes, Zhang obtained went beyond beyond this Bombieri-Vinogradov theorem. So he obtained a result very analogous to this one, but with the modulus able going a little bit above 1/2. And then the exponent which was above 1/2 was later improved in polymath. But the only difference, the basic difference with this general Bombieri-Vinogradov theorem is that here what he was needed is that really his problem needed only the Q to be of a special shape, that to be factorable numbers, so Q's having a lot of small prime factors. And he could exploit this structure which was given by the problem to go beyond 1/2. So this is Zhang's theorem is a theorem which cannot be implied by the generalized Riemann hypothesis. So for people who are mythical about Riemann hypothesis, this is something very important. There is an horizon beyond the Riemann hypothesis. And so I should say also that these are Zhang results, and it won't be possible to cover Zhang proof. But in my course, I will give some technical ingredients from L-adic cohomology that are necessary to Zhang's. And I should say that before Zhang's theorem, there have been some work by Fouvry, Ivaniek, Bombieri, Friedlander, from the 80s, which also went beyond this 1/2. So the methods there are very different and are, in fact, will be explained in the course of Jan Petro. So one could go beyond 1/2. The problem is that in Zhang, for Zhang application to gaps between prime, the starting point of the arithmetic progression was not fixed, was not a fixed number like 1 or 2 or anything. It had to be, okay, maybe I should put Q, maybe. it had to be to vary with Q. So, and it made the work of Fouvry, Ivaniek, Bambieri, Friedlander impossible to use for that purpose. So he had to prove another theorem for sufficiently factorable moduli. So, last thing I would like to say, I'm not. So then this is for large arithmetic progressions, but you have also you can ask a similar question for short intervals. So average result for summation of arithmetic functions over short intervals, and this is the topic of the course of Kaixia and Maxime. So thank you. Yeah, I could mention.
It's better than it gives a shorter interval. It's not asymptotic. It's what? It's by Huxley, yeah. It gives you a shorter interval than I think what you mentioned.
Give the asymptotic, just bounds.
No, I think that even the asymptotics.
Okay. Okay. Another question or? Yeah, there are many results I've not, yeah, and maybe other questions, especially for people in harmonic analysis. I welcome your questions. No? Okay.